Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield with a mission to address health inequities by building up communities and breaking down health barriers. Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield, everybody benefits. More at excellusbcbs.com.
For WXXI, this is Connections. Filling in for Evan Dawson, I'm Gino Finelli. Today's connection will be made on June 7th. That date will mark the 13th Rochester Real Beer Expo, hosted at Innovative Field. The festival, organized by the Business Association of the South Wedge area, has become something of a cornerstone of the Rochester beer community, bringing in dozens of local, national, and international brewers showing the best of their offerings. This year's festival will bring a renewed focus on New York State beer. That comes at a time when the New York craft brewing scene is facing some changes. Less than a decade ago, the industry seemed to be on a constant rise, with new breweries opening monthly. Now, the tide has shifted a little bit. The past year saw some closures of breweries like Pittsburgh's Copperleaf, and recently the downsizing of breweries like K2 Brothers, which has closed its Freewill Elementary School location a year after opening amid financial troubles. Point being, the beer industry is changing. And to discuss the trends in it, I'm joined by Rob Richenberg, curator of the Rochester Real Beer Expo and founder of Brew Buddies. Rob, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Paul Leone, Executive Director of the New York State Brewers Association. Paul, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me back.
And Zach Allard, Head Brewer and Co-owner of Iron Tug Brewing.
Yes, sir. Good to be here.
Thanks for being here. And Rob, I want to start with you. This is your first year helping to organize the Beer Expo, and I want you to explain a little bit of the approach this time around and why the focus on New York State beer now.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of separate the festival in such a way that we could really focus on what makes New York State great in terms of the whole beer scene, and also just like focus on, doing something a little different with the festival, having it be a place for brewers to showcase beers that they're not always going to bring, or, stuff you're not going to find on the shelves around town.
Yeah, and I think the Beer Expo, for its time that it's been running, has been the kind of place where breweries brought their weirdest stuff.
Yes.
Stoneyard being a great example
Yep.
of that. Brewing, I think last year they did the coconut shrimp beer.
Nope.
No, it was a chocolate pudding beer.
Yeah.
Oh, the chocolate pudding beer that was viscous enough that it was no longer a liquid.
Yes. No.
Yeah. So, I mean, stuff like that. The coconut shrimp beer was the previous year.
2 years ago. Yep.
See, in retrospect, these events become a little bit blurry for some reason. And, that is the kind of thing that I think makes the expo such a pivotal thing in the Rochester beer scene, is that it has really special products that you can't find year round. That it's breweries bringing their best, their weirdest, and some of their most unique offerings. So can you give us a little preview of like what you're expecting to see this year?
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of part of my big thing, and this goes along with what I do with Brew Buddies. We're bringing in a lot of brands that don't traditionally distribute to Rochester, and so they're, we got people coming out for the day basically from all over New York State, and obviously, past New York State as well. But it's going to be brands from Long Island coming up. It's brands from the North Country coming down. Kind of just like, for them, it's a way to test the market and reach out to new customers. And it's also a way for Rochester to really showcase, some beers that people aren't going to find other places.
So when I'm talking about changes in the industry, I wanted to point to some figures about New York State beer. And this is from the National Brewers Association. New York had the second highest number of breweries in 2024 of any state at 549. Those breweries created nearly $4 billion of economic impact and brewed 1.6 million barrels of beer. That's 3.3 gallons of beer for every of-age adult in New York State. So it's a big industry. This is a very large industry that the number of breweries has kind of floated around the 500 number for the past couple years. And comparing to the boom period of the mid-2010s, Paul, I want to ask you, what's different now than what was happening then?
Oh, I think, I read a really great quote recently. It says, craft beer isn't growing, it's growing up. And so the industry has evolved. And, our numbers in New York have been relatively flat over these last few years. And I look at that as a real positive. There are some, a lot of breweries closures around in other states. New York seems to be holding our own. You know, one closes. You'd mentioned, you know, we lost Nine Spot, we lost Copperleaf. You know, K2's, you know, right sizing or downsizing a little bit, but we gained Spotted Octopus, right? So we're seeing moves like that. I mean, Buffalo's Spotted Octopus, you know, opening up, you know, in the old rock space, and so the industry is maturing and it's adapting to kind of the new reality of craft beer.
So I think at the peak period of that craft beer boom, and especially in the late 2010s into the pandemic era, it was really driven by people that wanted to try new things. They were always constantly looking for new beers. This was the era when like heavily fruited sours became a thing, pastry stouts became a thing. I don't know if that's the case now, that it's constantly on the cutting edge. And Zach, I want to ask you about this because you're actually making the beer. I mean, how do you stay relevant now? What do people want? What's gravitating towards them?
Consistency. That's probably the biggest driving factor for us. You know, you can only push the envelope so far. That definitely, you know, when I started over 10 years ago, it was always, what can you do this week? What's cutting edge? What's new? You know, sours weren't even a thing, and now they're everywhere. But yeah, people just want good, clean, consistent beer. They expect the same thing every time they come in. You know, we dedicate 2 out of our 10 tap lines year round to 2 beers just because, you know, people expect that, and everything else you can play around with here or there, but people just kind of want beer flavored beer. You can still do the weird stuff, but it's not as prevalent as it needed to be, you know, 5-10 years ago.
Is doing the weird stuff now, is it different in that you don't have to do it, but you want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, and there's the need. You know, the customers kind of, they don't tell you what to do, but they will dictate what you brew. You know, they'll let you know with their wallet if they like something or not, and you know, your run rates will determine that. You'll find out really quick. Okay, that was a misstep. Maybe I don't do that again, or you know, maybe I do it and change something up a little bit. So yeah, it really depends on the brewery, honestly, as well. There's something I try that maybe, you know, Three Heads or Spotted Octopus or somebody down the road does that might not work at their spot, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think that every brewery is going to have an IPA on tap.
Yeah, you expect your lager, your IPA, your sour maybe, and then everything else is kind of just up in the air.
Yeah, and then you have, you know, breweries like Mortalis is a good example that they really made their reputation off of being the extreme kind of beer stuff, and I think that's what they do well, and they keep doing it. But that model, I don't think has been something that's sustainable for everyone. I think there was a period of time when everyone was trying to do that, of what's the most ridiculous thing I can brew, and that is no longer the case. It doesn't excite people as much as it used to. And Rob and Paul, I want to get your perspective on this too. I mean, what do you think people are gravitating towards now? I mean, what is like the driving trend right now in the beer industry? And I say this as someone who's kind of outside of it now. I don't really follow the trends, so I don't really get to see what exactly is happening that is different. So yeah, what do you think the driving forces are now?
I think the thing that I'm seeing more of is more sessionable beers, not necessarily NA, but, you know, to have that middle ground where it's like, hey, I want something that's 3% alcohol that I can drink more than one of, and, you know, it's not going to affect me the same way.
Yeah, I think, you know, as you know, millennials, you know, kick this all off in a big way, and you know, I'm a Gen Xer, and then the Boomers, you know, still drink. But I think that I'm even at the point now, and Zach mentioned earlier, he's got 2 beers on tap. When I go to Iron Tug, I drink Tug Light. You know, it's a 4%, you know, easy drinking beer, and I see that a lot of breweries, beer that tastes like beer. You know, you want to have a few of them. That's great for the breweries. Instead of going out and having an 8% IPA, those still sell. But I think drinking trends have changed, and you know, and also like you know, a lot of these breweries also, you know, offer other things to people. You know, people aren't just wanting beer anymore. They'll want some wine. They'll want some cider. They'll want some of these things. And, you know, and breweries have adapted that way as well.
And I think going with that too, kind of like what you said, where like, you know, Mortalis is known for their fruited sours, and, you know, Three Heads is known for their IPA. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the issues breweries are struggling with right now is just trying to find what their identity is. You know, they can, if you're leaning into something like that and you're known for it, they're going to ride it out as long as possible. But a lot of these places are, you know, just struggling to get a foothold and figure out, okay, what's our thing? What's our niche? What are we going to be known for? So
I think that's a good point. I mean, if you're the kind of brewery that opens up, like a lot did in the late 2010s, that we brew everything. Mm-hmm. well, I know that not everything is going to be as good as everything else. Like there's something that you're good at. I mean, I think every brewer could probably brew any style somewhat competently if they're halfway decent. But there's always going to be a thing that you're best at, and things that you're not as good at. And I don't know, I think the breweries that I think are doing well right now seem to be the ones that are focused on like this is our style and like this is like what we do best. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that, like of like having an identity of like what defines you as a brewery. We can go around on
I
that.
might have a different thought about this, but I think Zach and Rob, I think you should start with them because I bring a different perspective.
Okay, Rob, I'll go with you first.
I definitely see where you're coming from, but I think that I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I think there are breweries that are successful that do everything pretty well. That, you know, their identity is just consistently quality beer across the board. So I think that you obviously will see, like I'll use Brewery Ardennes, for example, where like Belgians are their thing. They do Belgians really well, and that's been really successful for them. But I do also think that there are a fair number of breweries, especially in the local scene, where they make everything pretty well, and that's kind of their identity is, you know, just consistent quality across the board.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty well said. I mean, like for perspective, I mean when I started there was 140 maybe breweries. So now 549 in 10 years. That's it's increased quite a bit. So everybody's struggling for that same foothold. But yeah, I mean I agree with Rob completely. Makes sense.
I think where the industry has changed the most, and so we're talking a lot about beer, right? And the quality of the beer and the flavor of the beer and all of that. And the way I look at it now with a lot of breweries is that really they're becoming more hospitality focused, right? Beer, they're still breweries. Iron Tug's putting in a full kitchen because they need to. You need to have a little bit more than just really good beer. I was at a brewery in the Finger Lakes that makes really great pizza, Scale House, and he was telling me this story that they shut the kitchen down for like a week to clean and do all this sort of thing, and their business dropped by half. And he goes, "That's when I realized that I was a pizza place that makes beer and not a brewery that makes pizza." Right. So I think breweries are getting more hospitality focused. They've dialed in the beer. They're making good beer. They're making it consistently for the most part, especially in the Rochester area. But now like the consumer's looking for a little bit more. And so the hospitality end of the craft beer industry is really you're starting to see more of that.
Yeah, I think something that Jen Newman, the former owner of Young Lion Brewing, used to say to me a lot is that it's about developing an experience. And that was kind of the defining trait of a good brewery is that it was memorable going there, maybe for the beer itself, but also for the ambiance and the food. All these things together are what makes this kind of a successful business as a whole. I want to jump back to something we kind of mentioned before about trends in drinking in and of itself. I pulled some numbers earlier about this. It was a Gallup poll last year, and it found that for adults under the age of 35, 60% of them drank. So about 40% said they didn't. That's down 12%. From 20 years ago, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's like a pretty significant shift in a pretty short amount of time. A lot of people either are drinking less or not drinking at all. And Paul, I'll start with you on that. I mean, do you think that those kind of trends are affecting the beer industry as a whole, and how can they adapt to that? I mean, where do craft breweries fit into that kind of social movement?
Absolutely. I mean, it certainly does affect, the health trend. People wanting to be a little bit healthier. Also, the more options that are available today. And I mean, there's THC beverages now. There are, alcoholic Mountain Dew. Like the variety also plays in a factor of that right now. I think everybody keeps bringing Gen Z. Gen Z doesn't gravitate to alcohol, in big numbers. But I think the feeling is that as they mature and as they get older, they will. I mean, the options, are out there and they'll experiment a little bit more. So nobody's panicking, but for those that are in the industry right now, that's why it goes back to, all right, so how do you get the Gen Zers in and how do you get the younger people in? Breweries do trivia nights and they do more experiential things to bring people in, and they don't have to drink alcohol. They're just there because of, it's a cool place to be, sort of thing. So I don't think there's great worry right now. I think I do talk to a lot of breweries, and they say the one thing that they do see down is not that people aren't drinking, but they're not drinking as much. So somebody might go in and buy like 2 or 3 beers, and they're getting 1 or 2 beers instead, and that certainly affects the bottom line.
Yeah, and I mean, I think of myself because I'm looking at one. There's the numbers here, and then like my own experience is like I stopped drinking over a year ago, and I'm at the point now where it's like occasionally I want a beer, but it's rarer, and also most of the people in my life, like my friend circle, most of them kind of gravitated away from it too. When like all of us were pretty into beer before.
Beer and all alcoholic beverages, or just beer?
I
Like,
think
is there alternatives that you find that you're turning to and your friends are turning to?
Weed
Okay.
is definitely the big one. Like I think a lot of people have like just found that I think you get older and you start to get like actually experience hangovers is one
right.
one major thing that does like try to skew you away from like, man, I don't want to do that all the time. But I mean, I think there's a lot of factors there that this is a question that I think about a real lot of, like, why is this happening? And like, why is the social trend coming out this way? And every person I think has an individual reason for it, but as a whole, like trying to see why the crowd moves one way, I don't think there is a clear answer. But it's something that I'm always thinking about, and I want an answer to it. Of like, why is this trend kind of happening? But to the point, when I like maybe once a month do want to just have a beer, like I am gravitating towards those 3% table beer kind of stuff. Flights, huge deal. That's it's a great way to get the kind of portion that I want out of it. I don't know. There's no question here, but I think it's a point of the conversation too.
I guess I'll throw my 2 cents in there. So like we're not reinventing the wheel here. Like beer's been around for a long time. Obviously, you got your major brands. Have a ton of money. They're not going anywhere. And again, I think it all is cyclical. There's times where people drink more, people drink less throughout history. But also like. It's just one of those things. It comes and goes, but the quality, again, if your beer's not good, you probably will close eventually because people do vote with their wallet. It's the sad truth about it. So there's a lot of breweries, and everybody wants to open a brewery. Everybody wants to be a brewery or a business owner, and it takes a lot of hard work, and you've got to be good at it. Ultimately, is your bottom line. So that's my input on that hot take.
Well, I think. To that point, I mean, 2016 era, 2017, when like this like boom was really happening, there was so many breweries opening, and there was so much bad beer on the market.
Oh, there still is.
There's still a lot.
There's a lot more of it now.
Yes, that's true, and I do think that we have about 5 times the number of breweries in the state than we did then. I would argue that it's less common to just find like a completely infected garbage beer on tap at a brewery than it was in 2016 or 2017. So that level has changed, but I think there still is a lot of mediocre product on the market, which 537 breweries is a lot of breweries. Is it too many?
I mean, there's never enough beer.
No. Go ahead, Rob.
I think the big thing with that is looking at the number by itself doesn't necessarily tell you the story of it, because, the analogy I always give is like, if 20 new more breweries in Rochester opened next year, that would be fine as long as they're not trying to be the next Sierra Nevada. They're not trying to be the next Three Heads. If we have smaller breweries that are opening and essentially just replacing your neighborhood bar, then that's fine. If they have no real plans on doing any sort of meaningful distribution outside of their own 4 walls, then we could support a lot more breweries. It's more breweries that are opening and fighting for shelf space and tap space at bars that's going to really that's when we're getting to the point where there's going to be too many.
That's a big industry shift too. I mean, I think that during that era when we were having that craft beer boom, it was kind of the goal to some degree to enter distribution.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore, is it?
No, I think so. I read a stat from the BA too. The retail dollar actually rose last year 3%, and a lot of that is because breweries are focusing more in house. I think that wholesalers, the bigger wholesalers, are only going to carry a certain number of brands. I think what Rob does with Brew Buddies is super important. Because he's getting like a lot of local craft beer into spots that the big wholesalers aren't going to carry. So what he does is super critical to the industry right now.
Thanks, Paul.
I mean, it's true. I mean, I think every brewery needs an angle and an edge somehow, and what Brew Buddies does is important to smaller craft breweries. So breweries have learned that back in the olden days, when like 10 years ago, even be like, I'm going to open up a brewery and I'm going to sell all my beer at Wegmans and everywhere else, and everybody's going to carry my beer, and I'm going to make. And the Fred Matt, who I love, who owns FX Matt Brewing Company, and his family's been in the business since the 1800s, and he's fourth generation. He would always tell everybody like, well, great, you want to get into distribution? Would you rather make $5 a case or $5 a pint? Right. So think about that. And so it's a volume business, and there's not that much shelf space.
Yeah, and when it becomes really crowded too, I think we might be past that era where people go into a Wegmans and see all these different craft breweries on the shelves and like, oh, I want to try this one, this one, this one, this one. No, they're just going to go to the one that they already like. The novelty, I think, has kind of faded, is what I'm saying, and that marks a new era for any industry once the novelty fades, right? I think very similarly, we're kind of seeing that happen in the cannabis industry, where it's going from like, oh, there's so many different products that are entering the market, and people get so excited to try all these different things, and then you find the one that you like, and that's what stays on the shelves. And often, people like the same thing. So it's no, it's not a new industry. Beer has been around forever, but this kind of era of it did bring a lot of novelty to it that I think has kind of taken a back seat, or just might not be relevant anymore.
Yeah. I feel like the novelty's gone, and now people are more focused on relatability. Like what Paul does for us in the state is so crucial, just promoting local brands. And same with Rob. He represents our brand and gets us in places we wouldn't normally be. But it's more about that connection now. People, it's cool to try a one-off beer that's fancy and something you never heard of. But, when you can walk down the street and, have that beer every day, or, know that place is around the corner, it's just that connection with your community.
And so that's what I just want to build off exactly what Zach said, the connection to the community, right? And so I think what's super important, where we're kind of not talking about, we're talking about the beer, and the drinking, is that, you don't go to breweries so much to drink. And I know that sort of doesn't make sense. Breweries are very social places. You can bring your kids to breweries, right? And it would be okay. And a lot of people do. You can bring your pets to breweries, and you okay. And you see a lot, breweries are social spaces. I know bars are too, but generally people go to a bar to drink, right? And you're not going to bring your kids, and you're not going to bring your dogs. Breweries are set up differently. And so, especially when the weather gets nicer, like it is now here in Rochester, finally. And I'll go back to Iron Tug adapting. They're building a whole patio on Park Avenue, right? That's where people will go and socialize. And a beer will be part of that socialization, but it won't be the central focus of it. So I think that's what makes the craft brewing industry a little bit different than like just the alcohol drinking. Let's go there to drink and, all that sort of thing. Breweries are just different. They're social spaces.
Yeah, and I think that the reason that I still find this whole thing important to talk about is it's very much a community in and of itself. And it very much is something that is at its heart and its soul, it's local. And it wants to see the local community thrive. Every person that's, involved in the brewing industry or the craft brewing industry here, like, they're not wishing on the failure of other breweries so that they can succeed, like a lot of other industries that are out there. And if they are, I've met people like that before. They're generally not well liked.
Yeah. They just don't come around much.
Yeah, they don't come around much. And I don't think it's helpful for you to like act like I live in a silo, that I'm, doing my own thing and I don't care about anything else happening in the community here. I just want to do my thing and not care about anyone else. I don't think that works in the craft industry, which makes it such an interesting industry to me. Beyond the beer itself, is that it's an ecosystem that it's local and to its core, and it wants to see everyone thrive because if rising tides lift all ships, right?
Exactly.
So yeah.
What's really great about Rochester too, by the way, and we just had New York Craft Beer Day, the first ever, and we were trying to set up, where we could go that day without having to get into a car, and we didn't want people getting. And it was remarkable how many breweries there are in Rochester that you can walk to, from one to the next to the next to the next, and that's pretty cool. It gets people downtown. It makes it more vibrant. And I throw Fatties in there too because they really focus on New York State beer and things and. And it's not something that's always been, and so it's pretty cool that you can do that here.
Yeah, I mean, from where I live in the city, I think there's 5, maybe 6 breweries I could walk through within like a half hour from my house, which is reasonable walking distance. I live closest to Swiftwater, and that's always a place that is cool to go to. Great food too. So it's still like. I don't want to paint the picture of like doom and gloom, everything's failing, and I don't think that's the purpose here. It's more that as things become more established, what does the future of that industry look like? So I'll pose that question too. I mean, what does the future of the industry look like as it becomes more mature? Whoever wants to start.
I can do. To me,
Go ahead,
you're
Paul.
sort of seeing it happen now. You're seeing some consolidation. You're seeing some right sizing. You're seeing more focus on internal and tap rooms, and so that's where the industry is heading, and that's not a bad thing, right? We're a mature industry now, where we weren't before. We were still finding ourselves. When it all kicked off, you could just make beer, good or bad. People would come and drink it. Didn't matter. It's a brewery. Let's go out, and it's not that way anymore. And so, the brewery the brewing industry is maturing. You're seeing a lot of moves in the marketplace where breweries are working with other breweries to increase market share. So they're just getting smarter on the business side of things.
Anything either of you want to add to that?
I think, kind of going back to our previous point, I think the big thing is going to be just, it's kind of the reemergence of the community in that way. We're seeing more breweries partnering with other local businesses in our community to find new ways to succeed. Whether it's like Spotted Octopus working with, I believe, Zugabee Vineyards to run their kitchen, where it's like, hey, it's local, we're keeping money in the community, and you're promoting other local businesses at the same time. I think we're going to see more of that to really emerge from the ashes of the problems that do exist in the industry.
Yeah, I think the screws getting tightened a little bit, everything just getting refined, dialed in, just people getting better at what they're doing, the quality going up.
And you're not seeing these breweries invest in these huge brew systems anymore to make more beer. So, a small brewery might be like, oh, well, instead of buying, a new 5-barrel system to upgrade from my 1-barrel system, they might ask another brewery that has a 5-barrel system to contract brew the beer for them. It's just smarter business.
And I think kind of going back to before, like what I said about identity is like, how big do you want to be? Like, what are you in it for? Like, I mean, you can open a brewery, but do you want to be Sam Adams? Do you want to be Dogfish Head? Or do you want to be, little 5-barrel Iron Tug? Yeah. Everybody making all these boat jokes today. He said rising tides, ship has sailed, Iron Tug.
It's all in the air. It's, I mean, is it possible to be like a new Sam Adams nowadays too? Is the question.
You got to get really lucky.
Really lucky, or I think you'd have to be doing something just so outside the box which I don't know what's left at this point that no one else has done.
I think it's just kind of time and place and luck. It's a little bit of, everything lining up at the same point. And again, you got to want to do it.
And I look around here, I mean, other half is every year seems to expand just a little bit more.
Yeah.
They're doing great and they make great beer. But it almost seems at odds with like how the industry has been going, that they still continue to grow in that way. And
well, what they're doing though is they're opening tap rooms where they're making more money in those tap rooms than they are at Wegmans, right? They're making money at Wegmans when they're, Wegmans gives them nice placements. They do have some, distribution, but you're going to make more money out of the tap handle than you are anywhere else, or people taking beer to go out of your place. And that's really kind of what I'd see other half doing, really focusing on tap rooms.
It just goes to show you can succeed while other people are failing. I mean, there are places that are doing very well.
Yeah.
And they have also expanded into the THC market.
Sure.
Smart.
And they're good. They're very good. I mean, but you are accessing a whole other clientele that, like, some people can go to your tap room and everyone has something to pick from. That, I think that might be difficult for a lot of breweries overall to be able to do. Is like you're not going to be able to put all of your focus into everything that's going to make everybody happy. But they're big enough that they can do it, which is in and of itself impressive. Is a word for it, because I remember when they were like one of the big hype breweries and people were doing like lines for cans that were being sold at Tap and Mail It.
Yeah,
and
back of a van.
Yeah, waiting in that line around the corner on South Clinton to get just a couple cans of other half. It seems like such an era that doesn't exist anymore. Like it's just so weird that that's the way it was.
Seems like a
then.
lifetime ago.
Yeah,
Two lifetimes ago.
Right.
People used to line up for beers. The line of cars to Mortalis was like, you'd be sitting there for like an hour and a half to maybe have the chance to buy a 4-pack of a certain beer. That's not the case anymore.
No.
Which I'm happy about.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they're not. I mean, they're still, all of those breweries are still doing pretty well. And I don't think they love the lines either, because there's they take a lot of crap, from people at the same time, limited amount of beer. Mortalis, like talking to them and Fidens out of Albany, it stresses them right out. They can't make enough beer. They sell out a lot of their own beer, but because the market has changed so much, the reaction 10 years ago would be like, well, we need to spend $3 million and build a giant brewery.
Yeah.
Now, they're brewing, they're selling beer, they're making beer, and they're selling beer, and they're not going to, they're not going to try to be the next Sam Adams or any of that.
So we just got a comment on our YouTube that actually brings up an interesting business model in Sager Stoneyard, which combined their tap rooms.
Good example.
Which Rob knows very well.
Yes.
But, that was an interesting model that combined, first of all, two brewers with radically different senses of
little bit
of different sensibilities in brewing. And it seems to be working. Seems to be going well. But, Rob, I wonder if you could talk about how that model has worked a little bit, because you've worked really close with Paul over at Sager. And, get some of your thoughts there.
It's kind of I look at it as like a yin and yang situation. Like you said, Oz and Stoneyard do much more contemporary style beers, whereas Sager focuses on the traditional stuff. And I think they complement each other really well. So it's been really successful to have that. We talk about the ways that like having more than one brewery in an area will attract more people in. Having two breweries in one space has done that really well.
And there's a third factor in there, by the way. Going back to the hospitality side, it's Sager Stoneyard, Doughboys.
Doughboys, yeah.
Right? Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my
but
God.
that's all very deliberate, right? I think
Yes.
now you can get great food. You can get two different breweries. Like that's part of the adapting you're seeing right now in the industry.
Very smart business decision. I mean, you've got people that they're not going under, but they could see the writing on the wall and realize that they're better, utilizing each other, and they built something amazing now. That place is packed every day, and the food is phenomenal.
We joke all the time.
Beer
we have
is
to
phenomenal. Food's phenomenal.
We have to add a fourth business somehow. That's been my joke with Oz. Like we'll start selling soap or something, or drywall.
Well, he does make soap with the
I know
leftover
the
grain.
soap, the soap smells good.
And the soap is great. Big fan of that. But yeah, prior to that merging, Sager in and of itself was not packed all the time. To be honest, and they found something that works. Doughboys is they are not paying me to say this. I think it's the best pizza in the city, hands down.
I couldn't agree more.
It's great, and so yeah, that was a very, I think, astute kind of business decision to bring all these things together and make it work. From two breweries that I wouldn't say were struggling, but I think we're having a hard time finding like their Stoneyard had gone through multiple tap rooms that had struggled to stay open, and Sager was not getting as much foot traffic as you'd expect for a brewery that's in like the heart of the what do they call that? The Q neighborhood now, Culver University.
Yeah, I don't even know.
It's a popular neighborhood.
And it's a nice little craft beverage area too,
Yeah.
if you think about it. Black Button, and you've got Nine Maidens,
Living
and
Roots.
you've got Living Roots, and it's a pretty cool little area.
Yeah.
We're going to take our first break of the hour and come back, and we'll talk more about the Beer Expo and the state of New York beer.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Monroe Community College, hosting Scholars Day with keynote speaker Dr. Clint Smith, journalist and author of How the Word is Passed, in a talk on racial justice. Moderators include Norma Holland, Wednesday, April 30th at MCC. Tickets at monroecc.edu.
This is Connections. I'm Gino Finelli filling in for Evan Dawson. We are talking about the Rochester Real Beer Expo and the state of beer in Rochester, New York State, and really the country, I guess, of what kind of trends are happening. But Rob, I wanted to talk a bit about what you do. Can you tell me a bit about your kind of career path here of and what led you to the expo this time around?
Yeah. So I have been friends with Will for years, and I was always kind of ribbing him about the fact that all the little criticisms that the other beer nerds would have of the expo. And so I had always volunteered to help. And when he reached out to me and let me know that he wasn't going to be curating it this year, I, kind of threw my hat in the ring for that. But to kind of lead us up to there, sorry, could you repeat the question? My brain just stopped working for a moment.
Yes. Tell me what you do.
Oh, boy.
And what led you to the expo?
And there is no drinking going
There's
on
no
during
beer
this. I
or
just
weed.
want to
There's
be
no,
clarified.
We, I have been chastised and reprimanded for such behavior in the past, so we are not drinking on the air.
Yes, no, that's just how my brain works. So what I do essentially is I connect breweries all over New York State with retailers, whether it be bars, restaurants, package stores, to kind of eschew the traditional wholesale model. So, we're working direct, like for Iron Tug, for example, we have restaurants all over Rochester that want their beer, and we don't want to lose 30% of the money we're going to make on that to a third party who is going to, what would we do? They're going to pick it up at Iron Tug and then drive it to a different place in Rochester. That doesn't make any sense. And so they're able to have me do the sales instead of having the traditional model where you'd have a full-time salesperson. You have a part-time salesperson who is also a part-time salesperson for 20 other brands. And so that's what I do in my, my 9 to 5 day to day, which I think, in my opinion, makes me uniquely qualified to curate the expo, because I already have connections from my time before when I ran a beer bar here in Rochester. And so I feel like it was a really natural fit to, hey, I'm going to just curate what I joke is essentially a 250 tap festival.
So just want to talk a little bit about how it works in New York State if you want to distribute your beer. You have to find a wholesaler, right?
No.
Or a distributor, or
No, you can self-distribute
No,
legally in New York.
we went from self-distributing until maybe like 6 months ago, a year ago, to
Yeah.
Brew Buddies. So
Yeah.
yeah, it all depends on what you want to do.
okay. Well, I learned something today.
There you go.
Yeah.
Legally, you do still self-distribute. I have to say that on the air.
I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, first time running the expo.
Yep.
How are you approaching it? What are you picturing it looking like as you're kind of putting it together?
I'm not picturing it being totally dissimilar to the previous years. I want to stress that I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm kind of just approaching it from a slightly different angle, because a big part of this, and some of this comes in with my bias against the traditional wholesale model, but when we were talking to some of the distributors about the beer they wanted to bring, they were very much like, hey, we don't want to bring in any special stuff because we don't want to go through the legwork of having set it up in our system. And, if it's not going to sell at Wegmans or Tops or any other stores, why would we want to promote a beer at this festival that isn't going to translate into more sales for us? And I'm like, well, respectfully, that's your job. That's supposed to be your job. The breweries want to do this. The people certainly want to try these beers. And so I kind of stripped that layer away and went directly to breweries and said, like, hey, what do you want to bring? What are you excited about? What do you think people will be excited to try?
So, Paul, events like the Expo, for 13 years now, have been kind of this cornerstone of the beer scene. And I think when they started, it was really a lot of people's first introduction to like the craft beer scene when all these breweries were opening up and trying these different styles and stuff like that. And now that it's more established and the industry is growing up, what role do you think they play now in kind of propelling the industry forward, of having these big festivals?
So you do read a lot that there are a lot of festivals that are going out around the country. Beer used to be a beer festival every month somewhere. And I've been to beer festivals, and a lot of us have been to beer festivals all over the country. And I think that what's unique about Rochester is they've got two really good ones that are established. You've got the Real Beer Expo and you've got the Flower City Brewers Fest. And they're both kind of similar but different. And what's cool about the Expo, and I think makes it unique, is that they do bring in breweries from other places and beer from other places that Rochester folks can't get. The ballpark's a pretty cool place to have a venue, right? I have a beer festival. Whereas the Flower City Brewers Fest, which the association is now taking over in August, is really just New York State only. Sort of thing. And beer festivals, I think, are still relevant and important because Rob, you're bringing in more than just beer, right? You're going to have some other things there, for those that might say, oh, I don't like beer. And what's really great for people is that it's very social. You're at the ballpark for the Expo. And, what a lot of people, especially experienced people, understand is that you don't have to drink everything while you're there. You're there to kind of sample and learn a little bit. It should be just as educational as it is anything else. And so the Expo, I think, has done a really great job evolving over the years, and it's a really worthy cause,
Yeah, and I remember a period of time a few years ago where there were just so many beer festivals.
Oh my God.
mean, there was just so many of them, and it's nice to see it pull back a little bit, and that these are two, great venues for them too. The Innovative Field and the Public Market, just. What is more Rochester than those two things to host a beer festival?
Both venues are kind of like characters, in a sense that, they sort of play a role into each event and its vibe. And I think the Expo, is a really, the ballpark's a great spot for it, really is.
Yeah, and I think just the quality, those festivals are just they're so much better than all of the other ones we used to have. There was just so many ambiguous festivals every weekend. Everybody wanted to throw one. It was just another reason to party.
4 hours of drinking.
Oh my God, yeah. Now I dread sitting there for 4 or 5 hours drinking. It's like, but yeah, no, the festivals we do have now, they're spaced out. They're more of, it almost feels like more of turning of the seasons. We'll have the Expo and Flower City, in the dog days of summer. So it's just like a really good summer party. And, Paul has some other ones we do, Buffalo Brewers Fest. He does the Albany Fest. You do the Syracuse Fest. There's
Long Island.
Long Island.
Yeah.
There's, and they're spaced out months apart as opposed to, one every other week.
But
so.
still relevant.
But still,
beer
yeah,
festivals are still relevant.
yeah.
Rob, there's like a purpose behind Expo.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, with the Expo and with Flower City and with the other festivals that the association puts on, is that they're run in a way that's like holistically good for breweries. Whereas in Rochester before, we had a lot of festivals that were being put on by people who were just looking for a cash grab, where they were looking for, there'd be good exposure for you, donate the beer, and we're going to charge $80 a ticket for this. And it's like, well, that's not benefiting the breweries.
Like every brewery almost started their own festival.
Yep.
It was like everybody just had their own, we'll call it this and slap a new sticker on it.
Yeah.
And I think festivals have also evolved a little bit too, where just like breweries, we have to make them more experiential
Yes.
in some ways. You know, it can't just have, oh, it's just drinking, you know, whatever. So
I like that there was wrestling at the Canal
oh my
Side
we
God.
did
Festival last year.
wrestling.
We better be doing that again this year.
When we're going to do a tattoo pop up at Flower City Brewers Fest this year. People can get tattoos on site. And then you've got the ball field and all that
Yep.
stuff at the expo, right?
I'm going to say it on the air and hopefully speak it into existence. I'm trying really hard to get a dunk tank at the expo this year.
Who's going to sit in it?
I'll sit in the dunk
I mean,
tank.
I'll
I don't
sit in
care. I'll
anything.
take
It
a
doesn't
shot.
matter.
The idea that I was joking with Andy from Swiftwater about was that we want to do it like a 50-50 so brewers can volunteer to sit in and they'll keep half the money and then the other half will go to Bosba for the fundraiser.
Oh, nice.
So-
And yeah, you know, I think there are still some breweries that put on like small festivals. I know like IBC puts on the Stout Fest, which is great. It's actually it's a really good time. And
Mortalis
it's
does the luau.
the luau, yeah,
Yeah.
which I've never actually been to.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so
It's
I've
very
heard. But yes, there was a period of time where like you could spend $60 for a ticket to a festival, and like there's 6 breweries there serving their flagship beers, and like that's not really worth the cost of admission.
Well, and then it's a bad look too. I've gone to work festivals and you show up and yeah, it's 4 booths and 100, 200 people show up and then they get upset with you because they got shortchanged by not getting other people's beer. So
Yeah.
I think what's important about both festivals too is that the expo, it benefits South Wedge. Like, so these are we benefits New York State craft beer and holiday outreach, and so these are like there's actually we're not walking away profiting from this. They go towards a cause as well.
Yeah, and Zach, what are you planning on brewing for the expo? You have
that's
anything
none of
in
your
mind
damn
yet?
business, Jim.
Oh, all right, fair enough.
What do you care?
So something very special and exciting, I assume.
It's something specifically for you.
Oh,
Yeah, why not?
all right.
We have a couple people bringing casks this year, which I'm excited
I
about.
was thinking about doing that as well.
We hit some people who saw real beer in the name and were like, "Oh, this is a cask festival, right?"
Okay, now
I'm
I
like,
got to bring a cask. Okay.
So Brad from Seneca Lake's going to come up with stuff. Is he doing the expo?
I don't
we got to
think
get
so.
him up. Oh, all right.
He's the cask man.
Any breweries that are new this year that you want to shout out?
New for the expo, yeah. There's a couple that we've already announced on social media. Whitman is coming down from Saratoga Springs. Brazen Brewing out of Lancaster, who I also work with, they're making their expo debut. There's a bunch of surprises that I'll leave for the 6 weeks until then.
It's exciting, yeah. And I think Will Cleveland did a great job last year in curating it, and he got some great breweries from Toronto to come down. Blood Brothers was great. We had them on the show, I believe, last year.
Yeah.
So they were awesome, and
Yeah.
but I'm very interested to see what you come up with.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be the beer expo no matter what, but there's
Right.
always going to be a different flavor to it. So I'm
Exactly.
and when Joe McBain was putting it on too, as well, it was a different spirit there as well. So
Yeah.
What's important to note from like a New York State perspective, and we know a lot of breweries. A lot of these breweries like coming to Rochester. They like the people of Rochester because it's a good craft beer crowd here. Like they understand craft beer. They're not the 4 hours of drinking, get drunk kind of crowd. They appreciate good beer and a good good experience.
And we all get to hang out after. We'll
Yep.
get together at Swiftwater or Strangebird or something, and
Yeah.
It's a good beer town. Rochester, Finger Lakes, good area for craft beer.
yeah, I think Rochester is a very good beer town, and when you take into account the whole region, Rochester, Buffalo, I mean, it's a very, very vibrant beer community. However, I wouldn't discount the average Rochesterian's ability to get drunk. That is something they are
does happen.
capable of.
I know it's true. Not the focus.
Yeah, no, not the focus, and I think it is a much more educated crowd as far as like what they like, styles and stuff like that. There is a higher standard here than I've seen in some other places.
Absolutely.
agreed.
Yeah, it's hard to serve bad beer here and like no one call it out.
Yeah, you're not going to get away with it at all.
We got a couple minutes left, so Paul, tell us a bit about the Flower City Brewer Fest.
So Flower City, John Erlob's has his 31 years this year, August 22nd at the Public Market, and that's the longest running beer festival. I know Tap New York likes to say Tap New York's pretty great. They're coming back this year. But yeah, Rochester has it, and Flower City is it. So the New York State Brewers Association has acquired the festival, and so Nothing similar to the way Rob's doing with the expo. Really, not much is going to change. Except for more breweries from other parts of the state. That's where we're going to pull a lot of breweries up from Long Island and New York City and Hudson Valley and all over. So that'll change. We are planning a tattoos on site kind of section. We're going to make it a little bit more experiential and than in years past. But it'll look and feel the same, and prices didn't go up, and it's just going to be more breweries from around the state.
Yeah, and is John Erlob involved at all now, or is it
John Erlob will always be involved,
Yeah,
whether
I
he
would
likes it or
imagine.
not. I think we're gonna name the VIP areas. Is I wanted to name it like the John and Patty Erlob VIP area, but he's too humble of a guy, so it'll be like the Rohrbach. They will always be a part of it. There will be an after party afterwards. This is his festival, right? He created this, and what they've done over the years, and it wouldn't be what it is without them.
John Erlob being the founder of Rohrbach?
So everybody knows John.
Everyone does know John. For those who don't out there, somehow he is the for lack of a better term, the godfather of Rochester craft beer. I mean,
and one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet.
He is a very nice person. I did invite him to be on today, and he didn't make it, but I hope he's listening, and here's the love coming from the room. Zach at Iron Tug, anything fun and exciting coming up that you want to get out there?
I'm just excited for the patio, for the kitchen. It's going to be a big summer for us, so I'm brewing away. I was at the brewery at 4:00 this morning brewing a batch before I came here, so I'm a busy guy. Got some stuff lined up for the expo. Got some stuff lined up for Flower City, and some new beers on the horizon. So.
Yeah, I drove by the old location on Western.
It finally got bought by somebody else now. I think it's a dispensary, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure it's a dispensary now.
Well, that tide.
We've
change,
come
and
full
that's where
circle.
It comes full circle.
I
The
know,
next
right?
generation. Park Ave location is much better for you.
Yeah,
guys.
come down here and talk on Park Ave instead.
Yeah, much better.
And buy tickets for the expo.
Yeah, buy tickets for the expo. Rob, where can that happen?
Right on the website. The Red Wings hosts the tickets. There's still VIP tickets as well, I believe.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Cheers.
Thanks for having us, Gino.
Thanks for having us.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Labella Associates, dedicated to the pursuit of partnership for more than 40 years, offering services in the development of buildings, infrastructure, environmental, and energy projects. Labella, powered by partnership. LabellaPC.com.